Lesson 2. You must have completed Lesson 1 before you start this lesson. How does the information that we completed in the first lesson appear in the financial statements? Now let's have a look at the asset cost here, which is $100,000. Don't forget, it does not include GST. And the accumulated depreciation at the end of the previous year is $20,000. You'll see that depreciation is an expense, and the equipment and the accumulated depreciation is part of the assets. Now we don't need to know a lot about this information at this stage because it will be covered later on in your course. Would you please stop the video now and complete self-test exercise 6 on page 24. Let's have a look at the accounting for the disposal of depreciable assets. Well, assets can be disposed of in 3 different ways. They can be sold, they can be traded in on new equipment, or scrapped. Now we are just going to concentrate on the first option there, which is if the depreciable assets are sold. In our accounting for disposal of depreciable assets, there will be a gain on sale. Now this is shown as other income in the income statement. A loss on sale is shown as other expenses. Now there are also some notes to the financial statements, but we're going to deal with those later on in our course. At this stage we won't spend too much more time on this because it's going to be covered thoroughly later on. When an asset is sold or disposed, the balances in the asset account and the related accumulated depreciation account are reduced by a journal entry. When the asset is sold or disposed, there's a great likelihood that the sale price will be different from the carrying amount of the asset. If the sale price is greater than the carrying amount, then this business makes a profit on disposal. If the sale price, on the other hand, is less than the carrying amount, it makes a loss on disposal. Let's recap a few items here. Remember, profit on disposal is sale price less carrying amount. Carrying amount is cost less accumulated depreciation. There are a number of steps in the disposal of assets. The steps to record disposal are as follows. I'm not going to go through all these one at a time because we'll cover these steps in the next lot of slides. The 5th step we're going to look at, but again we're going to cover this in a lot more detail later on in the course. The first step in the disposal of an asset is to calculate depreciation to the date that you sold it. So, if the last time that we worked out depreciation was on the 31st of December, then we must calculate depreciation for 3 months. So you can see there that if the asset cost was $25,000, depreciation rate was 16%, then we need to calculate the depreciation by 3 over 12, and this works out to $1,000. So the debits and credits are depreciation debit, 1,000 because it's an increase in expense, and we credit accumulated depreciation machinery because it is a reduction of an asset. The second step in the disposal of an asset is to transfer the cost of the machine to a disposal account. Now the disposal account is a temporary account which is used to work out the loss or profit on the sale of the machine. Let's go to the 3rd step in the disposal of an asset. Remember, all these steps are important when we're trying to work out the accounting entries for this disposal. What we do is that we debit accumulated depreciation of machinery, which is $15,000, because previously it was a credit of $15,000. So transfer over disposal, we must debit it. The amount of depreciation to the end of December was $14,000. Remember, we calculated depreciation for the next 3 months when we did sell it, and that was $1,000. So the total depreciation was $15,000. The fourth step in the disposal of an asset is to record the proceeds of the sale of an asset. So in this case, the organisation received $8,800 for the asset. The debits and credits are as follows. Cash at bank will be debited by $8,800 because an asset has increased. Disposal is credited to $8,000 because it is a temporary account, and what we want to do is we want to reduce it. Remember, with any disposal of assets there must be GST involved. So in this case we credit GST collect because it's an increase in liability. The fifth step is to close the disposal account and transfer any balance to the expense account. If we have a look at the disposal account in your textbook, you'll notice that there is a difference between the cost, the accumulated depreciation, and the amount that we received. The difference is $2,000, and this is the loss on disposal. We debit that, loss on disposal, because it's an increase in expense, and we credit the disposal account because we want to bring the disposal account to zero, because remember it is a temporary account. Remember, this is the last step in the disposal of an asset. Remember again that we don't have to worry too much about this step because we're going to cover in a lot more detail later on in the course. Let's go through again about how we calculated the gain or loss on disposal. Remember, all this information is worked out in our disposal account. Remember, the cost was $25,000. The accumulated depreciation was $15,000. Remember, $14,000 plus $1,000, which makes $15,000. The written down value, or the carrying amount, was $10,000. We received $8,000 on the sale, so the difference between the $10,000 and the $8,000 is $2,000, which represents a loss on disposal. We see here that the loss on sale in the income statement is an expense, $2,000. Just a reminder before we progress any further, you've got 1 week to form your groups of 3 in preparation for the second part of your assessment. Again, go to the discussion boards to organise your groups. You'll be given more details after you complete lesson 3. Now let's summarise the exercise or the activities that you have to complete for lesson 2. First thing to do is you must complete self-test 7 on page 30 of your textbook. You can continue on with the review questions 1 to 16. You don't have to finish it all before you go on lesson 3, but try and complete as many of those as you can. And please, if you've got any questions, please go to the discussion board. The discussion boards are very important if you're studying this online. What I want you to do is discuss your answers to every odd questions in the review questions on the discussion board. So what I want you to do is discuss your answers for 1, 3, 5, 7, etc. This means that you must explain how you worked out the answers. Just giving me the answers is not sufficient. You must fully explain them so that other people who are looking at the answers to see whether they can understand what you have given to them. But I'll be monitoring discussion boards to read your answers, and in turn I will make some comments to further explain your answers or indicate whether you're on the right track or not.